Hey everybody, welcome back to the newest episode of the Pixelists, the podcast where we like to talk about all the nerdy things we enjoy. In this case, Critical Role. I'm Will, and that's not Blake. That's actually my boy Jeremy. He is filling in for Blake, who could not be here because has just recently welcomed the newest member of his family into this world. So he is off doing dadly duties, and thus he just stuck with me and Jeremy, of course. Now Jeremy's not very talkative, but he is a great listener, so that's why I brought him in today. So Jeremy, thank you for preventing me from just talking to a wall. Now, quite obviously, this episode is not going to be like a typical episode, and I wrestled with what to do here. We obviously still wanted to put something out, um, you know, and we do our in-depth recaps for every episode, and I am more than capable of handling that by myself. But as far as our discussion and theory craft portion that we typically do, I just feel like it does not make sense to try to do that solo. I did think about it, but I feel like it would just come off as, awkward and cringe. And that's coming from the man talking to a green stuffed dinosaur. So come on, you know. Um, so I'm gonna do the recap. Maybe I'll throw in a few of my thoughts during the recap if that makes sense. But other than that, that's probably all we're gonna get for this episode. Maybe if things work out, we'll like record a discussion section and just put that out later. Um, but the plan probably now is that we'll just get back to normal come episode 19. But a couple other quick announcements. Moon Knight premieres today, March 30th of this recording, and really excited for that. We want to do podcast episodes on that, but given what I just talked about, we're just going to have to see. It might be a situation where we have to talk about it in episode chunks rather than episode by episode, or maybe it works out that we can record and put out Moon Knight episode 1 before episode 2 comes out and we're able to do it normally. But just wanted to give a quick update on that whole situation. And similarly, basically the exact same thing, on EXU episode, well, not episodes, but the two shot of EXU that we're getting this week. Blake and I want to do episodes on that, and hopefully we will, especially since there's no real time constraint, similarly to how there is with Moon Knight or Critical Role proper, since we don't know if/when we'd even get more EXU beyond this. All that to say is that we hopefully will be still doing episodes on the EXU 2 shot. It just may be not immediately following because, we're going to have to wait for Blake's craziness level to die down a little bit, I'm sure. So just wanted to update y'all on that. And I mean, that's pretty much it. Without further ado, I guess I will jump into this recap. But again, I just want to thank you for bearing with us here, and appreciate you guys. So yeah, let's jump into the recap of Critical Role episode 18. And I don't know if we're going to cut this out and host it separately. I guess it doesn't really make sense to. But in case we do, I guess. If you find yourself on this recap video right now, and you're seeing us for the first time, hi, we're the Pixelists. It's not usually a stuffed animal. It's usually my partner, Blake. We recap each episode, and we also discuss each episode. I typically would link the discussion part below for those of you that are just here on the recap. But as I'm missing Blake this week, there will not be a discussion portion. But if you liked this, if you're interested, definitely check out the channel. We have recaps and discussions for every episode, and we will continue to do that. But yeah, let's jump right in. So last episode ended with the party rolling initiative against this plant monster made up of like twisting vines and roots, and has like a bunch of sharp teeth with an underbrush mane, as Matt described it. And so that's right where we pick up. However, it's only about half the party, as they were in the middle of a long rest and people, taking guard shifts. So not everyone is awake. So the first thing that happens is Imogen uses her telepathy to shout at Orem and wake him up, and Fern yells at everybody else, essentially. And soon enough, everyone is up and everyone's rolled initiative and combat is going. Now, this combat essentially took up the entirety of the first half of the Critical Role episode, so which is a long time. So I'm just going to focus on the big moments in the combat instead of going on every single detail. Um, and those were Ashton, F.C.G, and Laudna, all at some point in this encounter were eaten by this plant monster and had to, force their way out, which all thankfully did successfully get out. But with Laudna in particular, it was a pretty close call. She actually fell unconscious and was making death saves, but due to her special Hollow One ability, Cling to Life, she was able to roll high enough on her death save that she jumped back up to 1 health. So it was super cool, as someone who's not too familiar with the Hollow Ones, to see that functionality come to life. Pun not intended, but let's say pun intended. Another cool thing we saw in this combat was we got an expansion on F.C.G's mechanics. And what I mean by that is his sympathetic binding that he does with another player to, steal their damage and stuff. Because he did it on Imogen, and because he and Imogen had that mind meld moment where they really connected, that bond went to the next level, and mechanically that translated to Imogen getting a D6 inspiration die to roll at her discretion, and I just thought that was really cool. And speaking of Imogen, she used her new Feywild shard that they got in the previous episode to roll on the wild magic table when she twin spell casted catapult at this thing, and the results of that is that her skin turned like a sickly blue color, as Matt described it. And that was the majority of the big things that happened. Of course, Chetney werewolfed out, and everyone had a couple cool moments, but those were the major things. And the how do you want to do this went to F.C.G with his saw blade, and he basically cleaved this monster and felled it like a tree. However, that wasn't quite the end, as some of its extremities and limbs continued to kind of twitch and move. So Imogen actually basically used it as kindling and turned this thing's corpse into a big fire. And Chetney also was still stabbing parts of it, and ultimately they were able to strike its heart, which made it completely fall limp and be fully dead. After the fight, the party asks Imogen about her new skin tone and just if she's okay, and she reveals that she feels the same, but not really sure what's going on, and she thinks maybe it's one of these 2 new rocks that she's collected recently, and hopefully things will go back to normal after a long rest. But if it doesn't, maybe they could try to find help in a nearby town. So then the party, like I said, they were in the middle of a night's rest when this fight started, so they get back to that, complete their long rest without any further interruptions, and wake up the next day to continue their travels to the Hartmore. Chetney does prod a mushroom at their campsite when they wake up in the morning and get spewed with this poisonous spore cloud that also essentially makes him feel drunk, but he's able to shake it off and kind of warns everyone else. Imogen similarly was kind of roaming around the campsite and noticed that there were these ruins in the wilds, and with a history check, Orem actually identifies them as ancient elven architecture, pre-calamity stuff. And Imogen is fascinated by this, and so she uses Laudna's chisel to carve off a piece of an arc of the ruins to take with her. After they do that, they get on their horses and make their way, and that is where the episode goes to break. But we pick back up traveling, and they're just on the road. They pass another caravan of people going the opposite direction, and Chetney asks, any trouble ahead on the road? And the other driver just says, stick to the road, and that's all they say. So we continue traveling, and then we come upon what is a rest stop, essentially, on the side of the road. They see another group of travelers who are currently stopped and just resting and, hanging out, doing various things. And they stop to talk to them. There is a female dragonborn who like comes up to speak to them, and Imogen asks, "How far is it to the Hartmore?" And this female dragonborn, who introduces herself as Hutchin, says they're about 3 hours away. Um, Hutchin, the dragonborn, is the only one speaking to them, but the party notices that with her we have a male Qatari, who I believe is like a cat-like person. Kind of like a tabaxi, but I don't know if they didn't say tabaxi for copyright reasons, or perhaps if this is just similar but not that. Who wields like a bow around their shoulder. We have a human female with a drum, a small male goblin, and a female furbolg. So Imogen introduces herself, and F.C.G introduces everyone as Bell's Hells. And Hutchin wonders why they have a name. She asks if they're like a band or they performers. And Chetney says, they're multi-talented, whatever the job calls for. And while this discussion is happening, F.C.G tries to detect thoughts on the Qatari, which this component has VSM, like he has to speak, he has to do hand motions, the whole 9 yards. So Hutchin notices him doing that, and basically her eyes narrow, and the party tries to cover for FCG, saying like, "Oh, they like to perform," and nothing comes of it. But it seems like Hutchin definitely like keyed in on the fact that FCG was doing something. Now, in the detect thought spell, FCG just gleans that this Qatari is like basically on alert, is very suspicious of these random travelers, and he doesn't probe deeper into their mind in order to find new, like, deeper thoughts. Fern then asks Hutchin, "Oh, do you guys have anything fun for sale, like any trinkets or anything?" And she calls over the furbolg to Hannah, who is wearing a bracelet, and asks her to remove it, and basically offers up, "Yeah, we have this bracelet. It contains, these 7 uncut gems," and that, basically sell it for 20 gold. Fern doesn't seem to jump on that, so Ashton does. Ashton says they will buy it, and they do. And kind of also while this is happening, Travis asks Matt if he could do kind of like a late insight check on if this group was actually. Oh, I don't think I said this yet. I'm sorry. So this group of hunters, as Hutchin revealed, they are also heading to the Hartmore. So Chetney asks if he could do an insight check, and if they were really traveling to the Hartmore, or if maybe that was a lie and they're just saying that so that they can like follow the party. And Matt gets up and gives Travis a whisper, and we are not informed as to what he gleaned there. So the party's Orem actually offers, since you guys are traveling to the Hartmore, we're traveling to the Hartmore, why don't we make this a party and go together? He doesn't say it like that, but he offers to travel together. And Hutchins says, "Well, how about not together, but like in tandem? Like we'll be behind you a little ways, but we'll each be close enough to each other that we can help each other if something were to happen." And everyone is cool with that. So everyone gets packed back up, and they make their way to the Hartmore with Bell's Hells leading the way. And after a bit of travel, they arrive at the gates to the Hartmore hamlet, where 2 wilder guards await them out front. And they basically ask, "What's your business here?" And the group has to make a group persuasion check, which they pass, and they're allowed inside. The guards tell them where they can find the stables, a couple places to stay, and send them on their way. So the first stop is the party goes to the stables, kind of checks in the horses, and then they decide, let's go to the inn. So they head to the Sodden Grange Inn, and they rent 4 rooms from the halfling owner there, who has introduced himself as Dobby Kingsman. And the party basically asks him about Astani, about the Hydroga Twilight Mirror, and he kind of fills them in on the city. And while they're talking, he's smoking this pipe the whole time. And Ashton says, "What are you smoking there?" And Dobby reveals that here in the Hartmore, a lot of people, himself included, will grow and cultivate and dry their own. I don't know if it's tobacco or not, but their own stuff and smoke it. And Ashton asks if he can have a sample, to which Dobby obliges. And he just says, you know what, you'll have to find your own pipe, but here, you can try some of this. And immediately Chetney starts like whittling Ashton a pipe. But then after, conversing with him a little bit, they decide to get a few drinks here and kind of unwind and discuss their next options after having, the long day of travel. And it basically boils down to there's two things they need to accomplish here. They need to go to the Twilight Mirror and, do this whole heist thing. And they need to talk to Astani, who lives here, to find out not only about Imogen's potential connections with her mother, but also the attack on the Loomis twins and how that ties to what Orem is going through. So they decide to head to the Twilight Mirror first and are able to find it very easily as it sticks out like a sore thumb. So they make their way up to the door, ring the bell, no answer. You kind of see somebody peering through the curtains, ring the bell a few more times, and finally the doors pop open and they can see that there's two guards like still putting on armor as the door gets opened, and a male half-elf greets them, dressed to the nines, and asks if they would like, a day pass, a half-day pass, or the full tour. And Ashton says, actually, we're here on behalf of Gianna Hexam. We're here to speak to Mr. Hydroga and about this gambit. And Avon Hydroga is delighted. And he's like, oh, okay, well, you can't take the tour then, because that would ruin the heist thing that's coming. He doesn't want anything to be revealed. He wants all preparations to be made in mystery. And the details and everything are going to be revealed the following night at midnight. And F.C.G. asks if the other, or I don't know if F.C.G. asks, but he's asked if the other group has come through and if they've gone through the tour. And Avon says no, like they haven't, they're not here yet. And F.C.G. rolls an insight and again gets a Matt whisper. However, we're not told of anything he learned. So the party basically they've checked in and they know that nothing is going down until tomorrow night at midnight. So now that they made their introduction, they leave and they make their way to Mosslight Manor, which is where they have been told they can find Astani. So Orem walks up to the door, gives a quick knock. An old Uriah man, which is half elf, half orc, opens the door, asks how he can help them. Orem reveals that they are here at the behest of Oshad Breggio, and if he is Astani. And Astani says yes, and immediately invites them in as friends, since they are here on the behest of Breggio, and begins to make them tea. And as they come in, they notice that this room is warm, but it's very cluttered. Not quite hoarder-like, but, getting there. And as they settle in to have these conversations, that is actually where the episode ends. And that was episode 18 of Critical Role. So again, thanks for bearing with me on just rambling all the way through that since I was by myself this week. We appreciate it. And yeah, I love this episode. There's honestly a lot that I would love to just really dive into, but Jeremy's like a fake fan, man. I don't even think he watched this episode, so he really wouldn't be the best one to talk about it with, unfortunately. But a couple of quick thoughts from me. I loved learning about F.C.G's mechanics. I can't wait to see what happens with this wild magic skin change, because I think that it can only be reversed by I want to say like a remove curse spell, which I don't think anyone in Bell's Hells has. So be interesting to see how long Imogen is blue, and if any, if there are any, not repercussions, because I don't think functionally anything's different, but it's kind of weird to have your entire skin change. So just be interesting to see what comes of that. What else? That other group actually asked on Twitter when I knew that I was going to be doing this by myself if anyone had anything in particular they wanted to be addressed, and Rita actually reached out and mentioned this group as well. just wondering what they're like, what's going on with them. And I agree. I had the same thoughts on them. Do we think it's going to be the other group that is involved in this Twilight Mirror heist? I think so. I think that would make sense and would be interesting, but also, they don't necessarily have to be them, right? Living, breathing world, they just ran into some other travelers. But I think it would be really cool if that was the other heist group, and just to see how this relationship evolves. I think it would be I think it would be fascinating if we kind of had a recurring rival group throughout the campaign. And I mean, maybe these guys turn out to be like straight enemies and therefore, you know, need to be dealt with, or something to that fashion. But it would be cool if it remained like a competitive but friendly type of relationship. Like a Ash Ketchum Gary Oak type scenario. A recurring, not antagonist, but you know what I mean. I'm rambling. Um, but yeah, it's fun to kind of postulate maybe like what classes that group was, because I believe we have a Dragonborn, clearly a Furbolg, a Goblin, a Human, and a Katari. So a nice little assortment there. So I can't wait to hopefully find out more about them if we do. Other than that, I'm really excited for the next episode. I'm sad that we have to wait a couple weeks. At least we do get the EXU content on this off week. But I'm really excited to see where the next episode takes us. I imagine we're gonna get the heist and also maybe some juicy stuff from Istani. So I'm excited, and that's basically all I got. Again, thanks for bearing with us here. I appreciate you guys. Or if anyone made it to this point, I appreciate it for hanging out with me and Jeremy this long. He's a little green. Get it? Like inexperienced. Yeah. Yeah, I need to talk to another human. Anyway, appreciate y'all sticking around. Appreciate everything, and hopefully back to the normal show and bananas next week. The normal show and bananas? I don't know. Jeremy, thumbnail, bro. You got any ideas? Okay, let's do it. Have a good one, y'all.